Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Batman, which is actually the Arkham Knight version of Batman. Does it say it on the package? Yes, it does. Okay. So this is the video game version where he's built like a tank, and he has tree trunks for legs, and all kinds of high-tech armor and fanciness. And it's one of the more popular modern designs for Batman, even though it is from a video game. So I'm sure many people are very excited to have a figure form of this. That's actually not terrible. Many of them have been terrible. Some of them have been pretty decent over the years, but this game is like 100 years old at this point. So it's kind of odd that we're getting this now, but is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? We'll see. There's kind of a lot to talk about. So let's go ahead and get it off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands just about 19 centimeters to the top of his head. If you want to count his ears, let's just push it up to like 19.75 centimeters, something like that. It's probably a little more. Depends on how you have his head adjusted. And so that's going to give him about 7.5 inches to the top of the cranium, closer to 7 3/4, give or take, to the top of the ears. Before we get into the review, let's go ahead and do a question of the day. Which bat suit from these Arkham games is your favorite? I would bet most people are going to say either the Arkham Knight version or the Arkham Origins version. Both of them are incredibly good designs. I tend to go for the more classic look of Arkham City, but you guys can let me know what you think in the comment section below. All right, for this figure, is it good? Is it bad? Obviously, there's going to be some of both. From an aesthetic standpoint, they did do a lot of things really well. If you don't count the bottom half, the top half is very nicely proportioned. If you don't count the top half, the bottom half is not all that well proportioned, and it's even worse when you put it with the top half. His legs are way too slender, way too small, especially for the amount of armor that he has on. It just doesn't match the source material. Even if you look at the image on the box, which is also the image on the trading card you get with the figure, you can see how different the proportions are. His legs should be significantly larger. I mean, there's a lot wrong, including the paint job there's a lot that's inaccurate, and I really wish they'd just stop including the trading cards in the images because it's making the figures look even worse. That being said, there is a lot going on here that is not too bad. They did do a lot of things very nicely. Strangely enough, one of the best things about this figure is the head sculpt. That's not a thing that McFarlane Toys has been doing particularly well. Is this exactly right? No, but it's pretty darn close, and even if it's not accurate, it's still really well done. So they do get a little bit of credit there. The detail work is well implemented on the figure. The sculpt work is clean. There's a lot of digital, I mean, I'm pretty sure these are entirely digitally sculpted, so all the texturing and things like in here, that's easy to do, but they did do a good job. They produced it properly. It's very nicely done. The paints are clean where they are, even though they're not accurate. There's a lot to like. The sculpt work for the cape is really nice. It's very heavily sculpted, heavily stylized, I guess you could say, which is appropriate for the game. He had a ridiculously big cape in the game. Not big, I guess it wasn't that big. It wasn't like Spawn level of big or anything like that. But it was a very dynamic looking cape, and they did a good job with that. So yeah, there's a lot to like. Is it the best Arkham Knight figure, Arkham Knight Batman figure? Maybe. I mean, people always want to know which is the best version of something. Well, it doesn't really matter in a review because being the best of something, if all the other things are bad, doesn't really mean much. So I tend to not focus on that too much. You guys can just check my reviews for the ones I've actually reviewed and decide for yourself which one is best for you. But from an aesthetic standpoint, they did do a lot of things really well here. So I'm gonna give them I want to say 8, but I'm going to go down to 7 out of 10 because the drastically inaccurate paint job for the abdomen and the hulking upper body and fairly slender lower body does take away quite a bit from the figure. So we'll stick with 7. As far as accessories go, we do have a very nicely detailed batarang, and then we have 2 other gadgets. I don't remember which ones they are from the game, but maybe you guys do. And then, of course, we get our very important trading card, which is not a trading card, it's just a collector card. You wouldn't want to trade away a card that goes with a figure that you buy with every figure. It doesn't make any sense. And then you get the little black display stand. If you want one of those, you get it. They're worth about 3 cents, and hopefully you guys enjoy those. So accessory-wise, nothing crazy. It's good enough. No fist hands, though, and Batman kind of is known for punching a bunch. He does a lot of punching in the game. Yeah, the batarang is nice, but no fist hands. 5 out of 10 for accessories. No fist hands for Batman is a no-go for me. As for the articulation, this figure does do some things pretty nicely. You can see the head can tuck into the cowl back there, the neck piece, I guess I should say, not cowl, and he can look up fairly well. Like, that's better than most figures that don't have like the hinge in here, which is not a great design anyway. That's pretty good. Looks down pretty well. You can lean side to side so you get that attitude, and of course you can rotate. This is pretty much all the articulation I would expect to have with this kind of design, and I'm very pleased with it. You're going to be able to do a lot of that style posing where you just kind of lean the head a little bit to the side and turn it, and it's going to make it for a much more realistic, much more dynamic type of figure if you're going to pose it and put it on a shelf. For the shoulders, we do have the butterfly joint, which is not really a butterfly. It's a ball peg that goes in, and then you have the cap out here that hides the joint. Although I can't get either of mine to move, and I've tried a bunch, so I don't know. It's never been well implemented on these figures. It has existed, I believe, on all of the McFarlane Toys figures of this batch, but it doesn't really ever do anything anyway, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. Then you just have your standard ball hinge out here. Shoulder pad is connected down here, which is a good way of doing it. It does allow the arm to come up far enough to the side, and of course you get your rotation. Hey, that moved a little. Yeah, just a little bit of movement there. So you do get your full rotation and your bicep swivel. This is soft enough that it will flex enough, and it'll hide the joints well and should work well enough. There's not a real great way to implement shoulder pads on action figures that have articulation. There's just no good way to do it for some designs, and this is about as good as you're going to get, I think, for this. For the elbows, you have your double jointed elbow. Let's see how they work. You have good range. That's definitely very ugly, very gappy and chunky looking. Not a great design, but very functional. And I guess it's okay because the armor is going to hide a lot of that gapping, so you should be all right with posing that and not worrying too much about the aesthetic. Ball hinge wrists, they're going to get the job done. You do have a little bit of a gauntlet here preventing some range, but the ball hinge is definitely going to give you the most versatility out of that joint. For the torso, I thought we had soft plastic here and a hinge inside, but it's either not that soft or the hinge is very stiff. But you do get hinging down at the waist, at the lower waist, or it's some kind of ball peg that's just catching, slip sticking, as they say. And so I don't know, but you can lean them forward and back pretty well. It does feel like a ratcheting hinge to me. Side to side also down there. So I'm not exactly sure how they did that. But you do get your rotation. It should be good enough. It's a very weird design, and you can get some gapping, but as long as you want all of the articulation to happen down at the bottom of the abdomen, you're going to be able to pose him pretty well. And for a McFarlane figure, that's pretty much as good as you're going to get from the abdomen. For the hips, we can do basically full-on splits. The belt moves fairly well out of the way. Going forward, though, not bad. We've seen better, but we've definitely seen worse from this company, so that's okay. He does have a butt cheek sculpted into his pants, so that helps not have a gap when you bring the leg forward. Thigh swivel, basically non-existent. Double jointed knee is definitely functional enough, no issues there. And then for the ankle, we have a true ball hinge ankle, which is the best, but it is heavily ratcheted, so getting him to stand is a total pain in the sphincter. Ankle rocker is not great, but because it's a ball hinge, it is actually pretty great. Toe hinge is where it belongs on this figure for the most part, but it's fairly floppy. Well sculpted though, so that's all right. I want to point out, with the heavily ratcheted ankles and a semi-ratcheted hip, it is very hard. Also for the knee, everything is basically ratcheted to some degree. It's very hard to get the feet flat on any surface, so prepare to have a fun time with that. But otherwise, the articulation is satisfactory. It's not the best, it's not the worst. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. There's a lot of limitation in some places, and in others it's pretty well done, so maybe you could argue a 7, but it's not going to be impressive from the articulation front. Most of the figures from this company haven't been. I think I know they have the potential, they just don't seem to want to implement it, so it's a little bit strange. But time for the final verdict on this guy. Is it the best Arkham Knight Batman? Maybe. At the price point, probably, most certainly. I don't know for sure because it's been so long since these figures, or since this game came out, but it's a pretty solid release with a fair share of flaws. If you're not worried about accuracy or proportions, go ahead and pick it up. It's a pretty cool Batman figure. If you are worried about those things, then maybe not. This review should have given you the information you need. I'm going to give it a final verdict of a very, very generous 7 out of 10. There are some very nice things about this figure, and of course, as usual, there are some things that pull it back. So there it is, guys. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you thought about the figure in the comment section below. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. And if you haven't subscribed, you might want to. I have new videos almost every single day and thousands already on the channel, so make sure you come back for all of that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.